Welcome to What? That Old Queen? A candid and adult take on queer life quandaries at a certain age. So please listen at your own discretion. Presented by Bernie and Tommy, the views here are purely those of the content providers and in no way reflect those of any service you may hear this program on. Now, please let your ears be upstanding for the Old Queens.
Hello, Tommy.
Hello, Bernie. Are you in?
I'm Bernie in and out. I've changed my profile, my Grindr profile name to that.
I think it's brilliant.
We'll see what happens if I get any more response than I usually do. How's your week been?
Yeah, busy, doing lots of different things. Moved myself now from not just being at home, but working in the office, which is good. I'm the only person in the office because where I work, it's mostly either people that don't live in Bristol or have childcare issues. So right. I'm the only one free of that. But yeah, I've got a very noisy fridge tonight. And I was just thinking, and it just started kicking in when you said, shall we do the record? And I thought, shall I go over to that fridge and kick it? Because that's usually what happens to stop it.
Well, I can't hear the fridge, but if you want to release some frustration and kick it, you can.
I won't because I've taken my shoes off.
Okay. It's a bit chilly today, isn't it? After last week when I was just literally melting when we were sitting here recording with Edson.
I know. I want it to heat up so that we can have a night out in the pubs, but outdoors rather than tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm still a little bit unsure about it. Do you know what I mean? I really want to go out to the pub, but I'm a little bit unsure about tomorrow night because I feel like everyone's going to go to the pub. And actually, it might be worth waiting a little bit to see what happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, and if the weather's crap, I'm not sure I want to be socially distanced inside. I'd rather be in a pub garden.
I want to be looking at what's going on, so I might just even walk out of the street and see what people are up to.
Yeah, have a little wander. Maybe I could meet you and we could have a socially distanced wander, see if it's worth going in anywhere. But it's quite exciting from where we've started. So we're on our penultimate episode. I might do a little extra episode for people who are our Patreons, so they have a little bit of something exclusive. They already have a couple of exclusive episodes on there. But yeah, from where we've come from at the beginning of the series to where we are now, it's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It tells an interesting story.
And I feel these podcasts have documented that in quite a good way.
Yeah, a lot of me moaning, I think.
You keep saying that. You don't moan about anything. I don't consider you moaning anyway. So I come from a long line of miserable old gits. So you'd need a lot to make me think that you're a moaner. Anyway, we've got quite a packed program tonight.
Yeah.
We got the return of What That Old Kink because I went into a little bumhole or rabbit hole after the museum bums came on.
Well, they inspired you, didn't they?
They did inspire me, yeah. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Have we got a What That Really Old Queen?
Yeah, so it's sort of related to our special guest today, who is Pam Tait. And years ago, so I've known Pam for years, and she'll be on later. And years ago, she lent me a book about a drag queen or a drag lady called Mrs. Shufflewick, whose dates are 1924 to 1983. So Mrs. Shufflewick was born a child abandoned at birth called Rex Costa, was named by a couple who adopted him and then raised him in Southend-on-Sea until 1938. And then they moved to Holloway in London, an area that was heavily bombed by the Blitz. Rex was called up to the RAF in 1942 and was able to join Rolf Reeder RAF gang show. And he toured North Africa, Italy, and Cyprus, putting on shows for the forces. And his flight sergeant was Tony Hancock.
Oh, wow. Love Tony Hancock.
Yeah. And he would usually play like comic vicars or other kind of leading ladies. And I always think, like, if I was called up, maybe that's the sort of role that I would take, like performing in a gang show or something.
Yeah, I would love that. I think that would be amazing.
After the war, as there was already a popular broadcaster called Sam Coster, Rex took the name Jameson after the whiskey to avoid confusion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Well, it's a bit like Harry H. Corbett. He put an H in so he wasn't confused with Harry Corbett, who did Sooty and Sweep. Anyway,
they developed a character that was called Gladys Shufflewick, who appeared on the BBC radio in the 1950s. Rex was the first Dane comedian to perform in female clothing when on the wireless.
Wow.
He'd arrive usually in a taxi, already dressed, and stayed in character. There were very few other comedians that did anything similar. And he was usually billed simply as Mrs. Shufflewick. And many in the audience were unaware of Rex Jameson taking Mrs. Shufflewick to be a woman.
Right. Okay. Amazing.
He did 8 seasons at the Windmill Theatre as Mrs. Shufflewick, and would drink at the Bear and Staff in Charing Cross, where he developed a nice friendship with one of our previous really old queens, Danny LaRue.
Oh, great.
Mrs. Shufflewick played in many variety theatres across Britain, sharing the bill with lots of other stars. However, Rex's drinking was more and more a problem, and betting on horses. And by 1960, they'd become bankrupt. In 1964, Mrs. Shufflewick appeared on an LP, Look at the Local, recorded at Waterman's Arms in the Isle of Dogs. He also appeared in West End shows and pantomime in Butlin's holiday camp, where he had to constrain his act for a family audience. However, then he started working in northern working men's clubs, and the bawdiness was encouraged.
Which is quite strange, isn't it? Because you think that northern working men's clubs were probably quite a difficult audience, especially if you're a female impersonator.
But they really embraced the queerness, you know.
Did they? That's so interesting.
Spaces, yeah. I mean, we've had Larry Grayson, and that's where Larry was a female impersonator in those clubs, really. So
yeah,
they were very, you know, in certain respects, they were very open-minded. He lived in, this is the bits that I like, he lived in a run-down flat in Kentish Town where he kept scrap metal in the bath, and was very proud of the fact that he had not had a bath for 25 years.
What was he hoping to do with the scrap metal?
Well, he probably just sold it on to the rag and bone man.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I feel like I'm a bit of a hoarder, but I don't have scrap metal in the bath.
In 1968, he's mentioned in the first edition of Roger Baker's History of Drag. In 1969, Mrs. Shufflewick was the star of an adult pantomime in Brighton called Cinderella with an S. But the police closed it down after 2 nights because of complaints about the material.
Wow.
Also in 1969, Rex met David, a labourer in his 30s who would stay with him until his death. And they shared a fondness for drink and gambling. By the early 1970s, Mrs. Shufflewick was mainly performing in gay clubs, particularly the Black Cat in Camden and the Vauxhall Tavern in Vauxhall in Lambeth. And she recorded live at the Black Cat, which sold well. But within a few months, there were performers who were doing her full act under their own names. And Mrs. Shufflewick has come up time and time again for me when I've been sort of doing my oral histories project, when I sort of travel around and interview older people about their memories of sort of places and connections that have a sort of LGBTQ plus resonance. And so a lot of people remember Mrs. Shufflewick doing a turn in the pubs and clubs.
But did you say that somebody else was doing her act?
Yeah, so they just completely ripped off. I mean, that's what drag queens do, really, don't they?
Yeah.
They just steal material. In his 50s, Rex looked over 70. He continued heavily drinking and smoking until the end. In 1983, just before his 59th birthday, he popped out to buy some cigarettes and a Guinness and dropped dead on the pavement. Over 500 people turned up to his funeral.
Oh, wow. Well, if you're going to go, that's not a bad way to go, is it? Dropping dead on the way to the shops.
I was going out with someone once and I said, I'm just going to the shops to buy some cigarettes. And then I never bothered to go back.
I know. I've been scarred to this day about that episode. Oh, wow. What a life. It's amazing when you delve into these kind of histories of people, that have been kind of on the scene in the UK, isn't it? Well, and all around the world, I guess. But I've never heard.
I mean, on the scene, but also like living on the internet. If you saw some pictures, it might strike your memory, because I think they were occasionally on television.
Right. Okay. I will look at the pictures, because obviously I'll have to put them up on Instagram and stuff. So yeah, I might recognize them. But yeah, it's so interesting. And yeah, I mean, so many people in the gay world, LGBTQ plus world, live on the edge, even to this day, don't they? Because of life, I guess.
There's some really good recordings of Mrs. Shufflewick's act that you can listen to, and doesn't actually, some material that's comic feels really dated because it sort of is very offensive, and it stands the test of time in that way, because they make jokes about themselves and their character rather than about people, like poking fun at the audience or other people.
Right.
So there's a sort of there's a gentleness about them, I think.
And you feel a bit of an affinity with this character because it's a bit like Annette Curtin. Is that right?
It is. Yeah. It's a sort of tea lady character, really, which my character, Annette Curtin's, she's not a tea lady, but I could imagine her being a tea lady.
Yeah. Well, I think they're always the best characters. I mean, that's the thing about drag. Everybody thinks and goes for the glamorous kind of pretty character, but actually the more interesting ones are the funny ones and the ones which are slightly quirky and not the most polished, I think. Well, talk about striking a chord or a rump. When we had Museum Bums on, which was still last week for us, but is 2 weeks for the listeners, they said something about people falling in love with statues. And it led me down a bit of a rabbit hole or a bum hole, because I thought, I wonder if that is, whether it has a name or whether there's a kink for that. And it led me to a Greek, or actually a Cypriot myth, and then the history of sex dolls, and then up to date with sex bots or man bots in particular. So if you
something to do with Pygmalion,
yes, so that's the Greek or Cypriot myth. So if you fall in love with a statue or a doll, it's called agalmaltophilia, which is a paraphilia involving sexual attraction to a statue or a doll or a mannequin or another figurative object or object of sexuality. So Pygmalion was a mythical sculpture in ancient Greece or Cypriot times, who fell in love with one of his own creations. He wanted to create the most beautiful woman, and he created this statue called Galatea, or Galatea, and he prayed to the goddess of love, Aphrodite, who, upon inspecting the statue, thought it mirrored her beauty. She thought it looked like her. And so she granted his wish and brought the statue to life. And in the myth, he married her, which is quite interesting. But then from that, the practice of having sex with statues was common among worshippers of Priapus, who we mentioned when Sasha Coward was on, when we're doing Greco-Roman times, because he had a big penis. So virgins would be penetrated by his statue. In fact, some...
I understand that.
well, a lot of statues are missing their penis. But in fact, a lot of ancient statues had removable penises to facilitate their use as dildos. And lots of statues of saints had very big phalluses, like in the Catholic churches and stuff. Yeah, I mean, they gave me a list of saints, which I haven't put down here because there's so much to get through with this. But it's quite interesting because a lot of statues had erect phalluses on them, but they were taken off by the church. But it was actually the church who kind of instigated some of this. So there's another case coming slightly more up to date where a window dresser, I wondered if you knew this person or not, Tommy, who was compelled to masturbate whenever he saw a nude mannequin. Apparently, one of his first sexual acts was performing fellatio to a supervisor while sat on a mannequin. He then developed a desire to rub up against them, like in a frottage kind of way, and have men watch him whilst he was doing it. So,
when was the last time you watched Mannequin with Kim Cattrall?
Do you know what? I think I want to watch it now.
Yeah, me too.
I should have watched it as some research for this.
I'm going to watch it tonight. I love Kim Cattrall.
I love Kim Cattrall, and I actually do love Mannequin. I don't love a mannequin. I just love the film Mannequin, just to get that straight. Anyway, there's a long history of sex dolls. So it's not just statues, there's sex dolls as well. They're mainly female, I have to say, but I think there were probably male ones as well. But because homosexuality has been frowned upon, it's less recorded. So French, Spanish, German navies had sex dolls. They were quite basic to satisfy the lonely sailors. The Dutch used to make them for the Japanese navy, and that's where the term Dutch wives came in, which is still used today for some sex dolls in Japan. So, and it's also reported that Hitler or Himmler developed sex dolls for the Aryan soldiers in World War II, so they wouldn't have to be made impure by having sex with non-Aryans, and they wouldn't get STDs.
I mean, I guess it depends who's been there before.
Well, yeah, well, with the doll. I mean, unless you're having your own doll. So there's lots of stories of automatons through history, and they're made of, originally were made of straw, leather, rubber materials. But with the advent of modern materials like latex, silicone, and vinyl, they kind of became more sophisticated and more lifelike in a way. Now sex dolls are very lifelike, and there are definitely male and female forms. Male and female forms are made differently because obviously men are slightly firmer, less softer than the female form. And the male sex dolls seem to be more versatile because they have to do more things, because they need to be able to be penetrated, perform fellatio, and also penetrate others.
I mean, some women do that as well.
Yeah, totally. Well, yes, I guess maybe like the statues, you could get a strap on for the sex doll so they could do a bit of pegging if it was a female sex doll for you. And there's also a fetish where one partner is statue-like, so they do not respond to what the other partner is doing to them.
I was actually just about to say that, like sleeping, like that. I've come across that before, like people saying to someone else, you know, can you just pretend that you're asleep for the whole time? It's a bit, you know, it's a bit rapey, really.
It's a bit rapey, but also if they're being statuesque as well, that's another form of this kind of fetish.
I've seen a porn film like this.
Have you?
On Pornhub. Porn Community Hub.
Is it a mannequin?
It's a woman pretending to be a mannequin.
Okay. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Well, they're actually using some of these sex dolls and robots now. So androids are the next evolution, which they reckon they will be using in porn within the next few years, if they're not already using them now. Hello, Pam.
Pamela is in the house.
We're just talking about sex dolls.
Oh, lovely.
So I'll just finish this off and then we'll come and talk to you. So androids are the next evolution, and some dolls even now have pneumatics, and where MP3 sounds are triggered during the sexual act, so it mimics reality. And
that reminds me of the Tiny Tears doll.
I don't know if I want to go there with Tiny Tears if I'm talking about sex dolls.
No, sorry.
But they reckon in 2050, these sex dolls or androids will be so human-like. And that brings us into the kink of androidism, which is falling in love with an android or being android-like. And lots of people, so over the years, lots of psychologists have been kind of studying this. What was it called again? Agalmatophilia. And they reckon that lots of people do it because they have difficulty forming relationships, or they're anxious or ashamed of the sexual acts that they want to perform. So they think it's less harmful if they do it on an inanimate object like a statue or a sex doll. But there's been stories of people that have like little like statues and they fall in love with them and they watch television with them and they read books with them.
Have you noticed that Pam's not making eye contact?
Well, I think she's sitting there doing her knitting. So.
Very hard to sit still. Sorry, I'm fascinated. Do continue.
Well, I mean, I've come to the end. Really, I mean, we've been talking about it for the last 15 minutes. So yeah. So
it also reminds me of the kind of porn category. I don't know what you call it, but is it anime or something?
Anime. Yeah.
Anime, yeah. So it's just like it's that sort of thing of like really blurring the edges of what real life is and what fantasy is.
Yeah, totally. But I can kind of completely get that people might find it easier to fall in love with something that looks human but isn't human because they're not going to hurt you in any way in terms of emotions.
Can you get them on Amazon?
You can buy life-like sex dolls now on Amazon. They're really expensive. But I found like 10 different websites, all from the history of statues and falling in love with statues, like the Pygmalion myth, right the way up to the modern day where there are like sex dolls and sex androids in the future. So,
well, that explains why you're reticent about coming out on Saturday night.
It's because I've ordered my sex doll and I've got my first date with it. But
I wish you all the happiness in the world.
But in this COVID world, is having a sex doll a way out of loneliness and having sex if this continues for any length of time? What do you think?
Yeah, and also, like, is it avoiding any form of cross-contamination? I mean, it goes back to Hitler and each one having their own Aryan-like doll that they could have a bit of fun with.
They could have sex with, yeah. Anyway, Pam, we're going to have a little break. So continue to do your knitting and we'll come back and talk to you after the break.
Okay.
I don't think she's knitting. I think that she's doing something more...
Is she rolling a spliff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not now, it's all finished.
She's doing so. Okay, right. We'll have a little break and we will be back after this.
If you're enjoying What That Old Queen, please share our episodes on social media and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you listen on. If you can write a review, that would also help expand our audience too. We don't have any advertising or sponsorship, so if you can contribute to our Patreon account or help us by buying some merch, the links are in the episode description below or on our website, thatoldqueen.com. Thank you for your continued support.
So we're back, and we have a special guest. So, Tom, would you like to introduce our special guest?
I'd love to. So I've known our guest, Pam Tait, I don't know for how many years. So many. At least 20, I would say. Yeah. And Pam is a costumer, wardrobe mistress. I don't know what you'd call yourself. Designer. And sometimes, I've worked with her and she said, well, sneak that in your bag and no one would notice. So, I've got stealing. I've got some lovely pajamas which I still wear from a film that we did together, a nice shirt from Queer as Folk, which Pam worked on, which I'm not wearing tonight because it chaps a bit. But please welcome to the throne, Pamela Tait. Do you like being called Pamela?
My parents used to call me that when they were disciplining, so not greatly. No, I'm not keen on being called Pam. I always want to be called Nerissa, but I don't think it suits me. So.
I like calling
Pammy's all right, yeah. I don't mind that, but I don't like Pat. Very bad. But yeah, I don't mind.
So Pammy's okay?
Yeah, fine.
Or Pam. I've always known you as Pam. I mean, Pam, we've had so many drunken nights out where I've danced the night away on the dance floor with you. It's been amazing.
Yeah. No, it's been really nice. Yeah. Some people call me Pammy, affectionately, but not very many. Yeah.
I like Pammy. It might stick with me, I think.
Okay. Next time we dance drunkenly together.
So Queer as Folk was quite a seminal thing because obviously this is a queer podcast. It's quite a seminal TV series at the time, wasn't it? What was it like working on that? Did you have a feeling that it was kind of groundbreaking?
Yes. As soon as I got the scripts, I realised groundbreaking because, well, for a start, if you look at the scripts, nothing happens to Nathan. And I said at the interview, what's going to happen next? I was only given the first episode, I think. And I said, he's not going to, get the clap or die in episode 3. And they went, no. I said, well, that's good. It's like a Candide, isn't it? But it was, Channel 4 was very worried about it. They didn't really want to call it Queer as Folk. It was going to be called The Other End of the Ballroom for quite some time.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was, it was approached with some caution. And I think people knew, Channel 4 were worried about it. And the people that wrote it knew that it would be groundbreaking. And indeed it was. I mean, I had people saying to me, I didn't realise they were like the rest of us. I think it's hard to...
everyone's rimming each other.
No, gay people were... gay people were the same as everybody else, which is gobsmacking. But I think it was the first time there was just lots of gay people that were just, gay. It didn't necessarily have, the heartbreaking AIDS story, or they weren't conflicted. They were just out clubbing like everybody else, So I think it was, we were fully aware of the foods, and the extras in Canal Street were just so fantastic because they felt it was really groundbreaking. And so,
but there was something about that I have heard retrospectively, and I feel like it's slightly unfair, is that the sort of absolute, hugeness, success of Queer as Folk was the sort of demise of we've just been talking about Mrs. Shufflewick, which you got me into, but that sort of edgy queerness that became very sort of shiny, sort of, with pecs and nice shirts and good teeth and all of that stuff. And I feel like Canal Street is symptomatic of that kind of lifestyle. And that was the kind of Queer as Folk marked that difference, really, because it became a kind of tourist attraction in that sense.
I think for a short time it did, but I think that's true if you think about the trans community and the position that things like Pose and mainstream drama does take over. And I think they were rock stars for a while. I have to say, on Canal Street the teeth were not good by and large. they were pretty grim. And they weren't buff. A lot of these people were rough as badgers' arses, But yes, I think you can say that. But then that's going to be the case with anything that becomes popular, doesn't it? And therefore accepted. I think it did let loose a whole load of drama that could be based around people's sexuality, just as a given, you know, that it wasn't necessarily a kind of driving force, which you can see as a weakness as well. I think that's maybe true. But at the time, it was just incredibly exciting. It's just great. So
I think that also that wasn't specific to Manchester. I think I think things like that happened all over, really, and the acceptance of gay people brought on this kind of idea of, like, I don't really want to say it, but like a gay Tory or something like that.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do, because it meant that, they weren't special, they weren't all left wing, they didn't all take drugs. You know, Vince works in a supermarket in Queer as Folk, and Nathan's still at school, you know, so it kind of normalised it in a way, and that has really good effects, but also not so good. You know, you have to move on to the next thing, I think. Yeah.
And so, what other stuff have you worked on? Because you worked in theatre, TV, film.
So I did Beautiful Thing, which is another quite groundbreaking,
seminal gay film,
which we made in Thames
with a fantastic soundtrack.
Amazing, yes, amazing. Which the BBC wanted to cut because it was too expensive. What have I done? I did some feature films. I did some big tellies, but lately I've done a lot of dance with impermanence based in Bristol, and I taught at Bristol University. So I've done a lot, I guess.
And for years, like, that's how I really knew Pam, was that, you know, Pam was in charge of the costume and a lecturer at Bristol University. And Pam would always, I'm going to say this, a gaggle of like young, beautiful gay things surrounding her. And they would, you know, look up to her. Pam would mentor them, you know, be the shoulder to cry on, offer words of wisdom. And then she left. And so I had to step on board.
You've done a marvellous job, Tom. Marvellous. It's been marvellous. The years at the university were great. Very bright kids who were, you know, really willing to learn. Very funny. And at its best, the studio just resembles Breakfast at Tiffany's, you know, the cocktail scene where it's just milling around with people, you know, waving bits of elastic and saying, "Where's this?" or, you know, "These don't fit." So that, it was very fun. And, you know, that ran a lot of designing as well, which was good. So I've had a good time. Yeah, good run. And I was sorry to leave, but, you know, there you go.
Well, life changes. And Pam's always great at always great at finding bargains, and not sort of, I don't know how to say it, but like, you don't really care where you get it from, do you?
No, I started out doing pop videos. Yeah, so I should have listed all of the acts I work with, like Girls' School, always interesting. And I did a promo with Justin Hayward and a polystyrene wall down in Cornwall, and I did Simply Red's first promo. So you just got people phone up and saying it's all based on Poussin. Do you know Poussin? And you have to go and buy an art book, you know, that you do it in 3 days. So you're in and out, and it didn't really matter, and you had no money at all. So I guess from that, and then with the university, the longer period of having very little and having to make the most of what there was a lot of, which, you know, you might have found in the road or, you know, whatever. So no, I don't mind where it comes from. I think it's really important to keep that open, you know, and certainly with Queer as Folk, there was so many people in it. You know, we were just at TK Maxx the whole time, like, wheeling shirts around. And I went on to do a film in Belfast, and again, finding myself in TK Maxx, there was a scene set in a club in 10 years' time. And I just had run out of ideas. So I started to pick the stuff up off the floor, because I reckon it would be A, possibly asymmetrical, and B, slippery, you know. So it doesn't really matter where it comes from. It's how you attach it to the person, you know, or the ambience. So no, I'm not bothered. As long as it does not the crawling. Well, I did give a student a bit of fur that had maggots in it, which was...
Oh, wow.
So my dad found maggots in this fur.
That's complained to you.
No, I think we managed to square that circle. It was fine, but it was a bit dodgy. She went home with this maggoty fur.
Well, at least it's organic. I mean,
yeah, the same kid, I boiled loads of fish heads for her, you know. So I felt that, you know, fish heads and maggots, it's like, really, you know, you can't blame me.
They go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Fin and fin.
Yeah.
With your own personal collection of outfits, you mix it up quite a lot, and you're always in something different. But is there something that you wear that you think, that has a huge sentimental attachment, or that you just you don't have that thing where you throw it on the floor? You kind of, you have a memories attached to it and all that stuff.
Yeah, I guess. In fact, the thing I was going to wear, but I was a bit hot in it. It isn't this, but this is. It's a Japanese thing, and it's called kazurai. And when I did Top Girls, I worked at the Royal Court for 3 years and did some amazing shows, including performance of Top Girls. And one of the characters in it is called Lady Nijo. She's from Japan in the 13th century. So, usually buttons to spend. So where the hell were you going to get everybody? I think they wore 12 layered gowns at the time, and masses of silk. So I found this guy who sold kimonos, and I went to see him in Notting Hill, and we couldn't afford any of them. I think I bought an obi, a belt. That's all we could afford. And then he said, I said, well, that's probably it, thanks. That's brilliant. Thinking, no money, what am I going to do? We're going to make it out of lining fabric. And he said, oh, but I think this is really what you're going to like. And he opened this box up, and it was just so beautiful, because these pieces were made in Japan, and they weren't for the aristocracy. They were working clothes. Kazurai, I think, means raggy, sort of, working clothes. So I think they're the most sentimental, not because of any attachments personally to them, just what they mean, and the history in each of them. So I still got the original bits, and they've been patched and patched and patched by me, as well as the people that had them. So I guess that. But there's always the next thing is great. I just love. It's been absolute torture to have no charity shops. There's loads where I live at the moment, and they're shut. And just to go. I think that's because when I did movies, we would come back from a movie, and you would kind of you'd live together very closely. And then you'd go away and the film would be edited, and then you'd all come back together for the screening. And everybody would have a new haircut and a new pair of specs and new shoes. It was very exciting. So I got used to sort of chopping and changing. So there's not much that is. This necklace is one of the things I like. But then I like lots of things.
So Pam, how would you describe what you do? Because
strictly speaking, I'm a costume designer. I do tech as well. But I think it goes beyond, people have an idea. Like I was also watching Ocean's 8, very bored, just enough film. And Helena Bonham Carter plays a dressmaker. No, she's a really high fashion designer, and they've got her with pins and stuff and a tape measure. It's ridiculous. I think what I do when there's a text, you have to know the text really well. I got the job as Queer as Folk because I understood what Russell was after and how amazing the script was. So you look at the script, talk to the director, and then talk to the actors, and you formulate a character that's really hasn't existed before, which the work at the Royal Court was useful for, because we always played new plays. There was you couldn't reference anything. It was the first time. So I think what I do is put together a kind of whole world, and then persuade the actors to wear it, and then find it for forms. So it's a lot of different skills, which are all. It's nice at the interlock. Some designers don't like text. I did because that's my background. But I also like colour, and you can create a person and help the actor really play scenes that are quite difficult or complicated, and really push the action along. So I think, I don't know, designer, maker. I make, which is unusual. Most designers don't make anything. They just point. But I like making as well. So, but I guess you just put it down as costume designer or costume lady. Somebody hailed me in the street as, "Oh, look, there's that craft lady," because we're doing stuff in a local window. They'd seen us kind of sellotape and hanging butterflies in this garden, and so we were craft ladies. So I guess designer is it, but there's a lot that is, it's complicated in what you do. It's a lot of different skills.
You talked about your background there. So what did you set out to do this as your career, or what was your background before this?
I was always drawing as a child, and I always drew fashion, and I always drew people. I was quite a good. My father wanted me to be a caricaturist. I was good, good at getting expressions. And then it turned out cleverness was detected, and I was then on a trajectory for Oxford or Cambridge, and I got into Oxford when I was pretty young. And then that was a bit of a flail. I didn't really fit in, and it was, nobody talked. There was only one person who talked about fashion. She ended up working for Harper's Bazaar. That was really, even at my interview, I was talking about William Blake and said he painted in watercolors, and the tutor said, "Oh, no, painted in oils." I said, "No. I was only 16. No. So I really missed it at uni, and then straight after. I met somebody at uni whose sister was a designer, and we set up a theatre company together. So I kind of was catapulted from not knowing anything into theatre, and I always wanted to do that. It was a real sense of coming home.
And do you prefer Harper's Bazaar or Vogue?
Well, I actually have got a subscription to both, and I think
I have at the moment because they're on a reduced. It's very cheap at the moment.
So I have been buying Vogue since I was kind of knee high to a grasshopper, and I've got a friend of 60s and 70s Vogues, which are amazing. So I think I'm probably a Vogue person, but I do get Harper's Bazaar because they've got better colours when you do cut-ups, collages. So. But I'll be a Vogue girl, yeah.
I'll always be Harper's. And never the twain shall meet.
Like.
It's a good job that we're on Zoom.
Yeah, people struggling now to cope with the fact that a very real thing has happened in the world, and that's very funny. Then you get ridiculous.
Have you seen the cover? Have you seen this month's cover of Vogue? Yeah. What is that about?
Yeah. Well, I think they're desperate. Last month's was pictures of nurses, which is all well and good, but it's ludicrous. And now that lockdown's loosening up, back to business as usual, and a little bit of what everybody's been doing under lockdown, which is mainly getting back to themselves, because they're all very posh and thin, So yeah, I think they're quite funny. They're really flailing, those magazines. I'd said they sent out a survey. I don't know if you got it, Tom, that said after the coronavirus, if there's a vaccine, will you be spending more on luxury jewelry and watches, or the same amount, or less? The same amount, which is absolutely nothing. Or are you going to go for speciality holidays? Will you spend more on speciality holidays, or less, or the same amount? And on it went. Or will you buy more shoes? For God's sake!
Yeah. What the fuck?
I quite like to know what your answers were.
Well, they're all, sadly nuanced. Like, what the fuck are you on about? You twat?
Yeah, I should have given you that.
Yeah,
option.
It was like other.
Really say the same amount, because that's true. It's the same amount, which is nothing. So,
yeah.
Was I going to buy more makeup? Probably. As I get older, it needs to be short. Probably get a bit later.
I might buy a luxury concealer.
Exactly. Yeah.
The Tusha Clay. Is that luxury or not?
Yes.
Probably. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Anyway, Pam, thank you so much for giving us a little insight into your world. You're going to stay with us for Queens of Agony, right?
I am.
Answer some of our listeners' quandaries.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm just going to do a big gong. Because that's my little ritual before we do this. And we'll get stuck in, shall we?
Okay.
So, dear old queens, can an introvert... I'm including you in the old queens pantheon, Pam.
You.
Can an introvert date an extrovert? I'm currently talking to this guy that I'm extremely interested in. I could see us getting serious relatively soon. We get along great, and the only thing I get concerned about is that I'm extremely introverted and shy, and sometimes get social anxiety, and he's extremely extroverted. I love staying at home and playing a movie with just the two of us. He, on the other hand, loves going to bars with 8 or 10 of his friends. As an introvert, I hate going to bars and hate being surrounded by all of his friends. Not because I don't like them, just because there is so many of them. I can totally see this being an issue, as my anxiety will always be on a high if I want to make him happy. Have you ever been in a similar situation? And do you have any advice for me? So, introverts versus extroverts. What do we reckon?
I had a husband who didn't really understand how social our lives were, and he was a bit introverted because he thought everybody else was so, arty and whatever. It is very tricky, and it can easily turn nasty. I would say, really, probably the introverted person to try and work on their social anxiety, because that's not a fixed thing, and maybe talk to the partner about it and try to have a bit more fun, really. I think, otherwise you end up one of you being like, the weather people, one of you being constantly indoors and one out, and that's not great. I don't think for a long-term relationship. Might work very nicely in the short term, but sounds like they're in for the long haul. That's me. Go on.
What do you think, Tommy?
So I've been in lots of relationships. I don't think I am an extrovert, but I probably am perceived as one.
Yeah.
And I was in a relationship where someone was they found that whenever I would go out in public, they would say, why do you always have to perform? Can't you just be like aimed and normal? I just didn't really know how to react to that criticism. And I get the problem. I can understand that problem. And it's probably the extrovert person shouldn't have to change their behavior. I think Pam is right in the sense that maybe it's the introvert that can find ways to cope with that. Like maybe they don't stay out for the whole night, or they, I don't know. But I don't think you can change someone's habitual behavior like that.
No, I feel like opposites do attract sometimes, and they see qualities in the other person, because not everyone is the same. And I think it would be really boring if you were dating someone who was exactly the same as you. And I think there's room for maneuver there. If your friend, if your partner likes to go out socializing and you like to stay at home a bit more, then that's fine if you're comfortable with that. But don't expect that person to just stay at home and watch the telly with you all the time. They will need to go out and socialize. And if you don't enjoy that, then you need to allow them to do that, on their own. And then you need to find something else to do while they're doing that. But I don't know. For an introvert, lockdown's probably been bliss, hasn't it?
There was a lot of stuff that was circling social media saying how to deal with lockdown when you're a natural extrovert, and I think they've had the toughest time.
I think I'm like you, Tommy. I think I've always been perceived as an extrovert, but actually I've done the extrovert-introvert scale, and I'm slap bang in the middle. And it's really interesting because I do like my alone time. I do like being at home, but I also love socializing and going out and dancing with Pam until the early hours of the morning. So I don't know. It's about finding a balance with that. And I think you need to find a balance in your relationship. I don't think it's the death knell for your relationship, but it will be if you see it as that. If you don't make a compromise, then this is the end of your relationship. But if you can see the other side and see that you need to allow your partner to be who they want to be, and you need to be who you want to be, then I think it can work.
I think that's brilliant advice, Bernie. I think you struck gold.
I know. Who knew? Half a bottle of wine, and I become wise. After 50 years. Okay. Shall we move on to the next one? Okay. Dear old queens, including Pam, what are some of the differences between gay and straight mannerisms? Can a comparison between these be drawn or not? How would you differentiate a gay man's mannerisms, body language, as opposed to a straight man's, including style of walking, talking, standing, posture, arms, hanging out, etc., etc.? I'm asking as I find it increasingly difficult to tell. Wow.
Well,
Pam, I think...
I immediately was... my friend Robert says gunning, which is... He said, did you just do a gun? Which is gay running.
Well, my response to that would be, how could I not?
You know, when you just like gun for a bus or like you've gone across the street.
Yeah, but I mean, what is that? I don't know. Pam, I want your input on this.
Okay, well, back in the 70s when lesbianism was just invented, I had a lovely friend, Helen, and I remember standing in the theatre looking at the foyer filling up with people, and I was saying, do you see anybody there you fancy? You know, how do you tell if somebody's a lesbian? And she was a late convert to it, and she said quite often they didn't have handbags, which is a very kind of wispy way. Anybody without a handbag, or if you just left it on a chair, Helen would be in there.
And quite often gay men do have handbags.
They do. So there's a link between gays and lesbians. Well, I think it's nonsense. I mean, a gay person, there's camp mannerisms, surely, and effeminate, but there's no gay mannerisms, are there? I don't know. I did read a learned thing in The Guardian about gay habits of speech and tone, which is quite interesting, that they looked at a lot of gay men and said, yes, they did talk in a certain way.
And what is that certain way?
A bit sibilant, a bit higher, a bit chippy.
But also that's another misnomer. I'm a voice artist, so I voice like loads of different things, and not because I'm gay, because I probably get loads of voice work because I don't sound gay. Do you know what I mean? It's like
I know, it's ludicrous. I mean, but then that's saying all Aquarians have got a wooden leg. It's demonstrably untrue. So I think it's a bit tricksy. But you can obviously spot camp and performative gestures, but
straight men can be like that.
Of course.
I've been confused by straight men who are married and stuff who just seem to me to be completely gay, and they're not.
I think the issue of performativity comes into it. Really, it's only after you've slept with them that you know exactly what you've put your hands on.
Pam, how many gay men have you slept with?
Not many. A few.
I think that's for the next time you come on the show. We'll have a few of those stories, please.
It'll need to go back and think about it for a while.
So, Tommy, what do you think?
I think that the question is, so just retracking my steps.
What are the differences between gay and straight mannerisms? I don't think there are any. I think there can be, but I don't think it's set in stone, is it?
I think that, well, for me, I think that you would know from the minute you met me that I was gay. Pam looks disagree.
Well, I mean, it depends on if you've met a lot of gay people and known they're gay. If you haven't, then you wouldn't. It's a bit more complicated, I think. You're camp, but they might not even know the word for camp.
No, I mean, I guess it's your gaydar, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
As they say. But short of them telling you or you asking them, sometimes you just don't know.
Put your hand in trousers and see.
I mean, we had Tom Shaw as a guest, and me and Tom have always been talking about a project that we'd like to do about gay voices.
Yeah.
Because I think there's something in that's worth interrogating.
I think so. I think that might be more telling than the gestures. Yeah, you just meet people who are incredibly theatrical, and then you really don't know what they're on at all. What kind of animal are they? And in the end, I do think it doesn't really matter. But there we are. That would be me.
Well, I guess it matters to the listener because they want to know. I think you just need to ask them. I mean, I can normally, after 10 minutes, I can normally get people's life story out of them because you know what questions to ask. And people, in general, want to talk about themselves, don't they?
They're desperate to.
Yes.
But quite a good way to get their life story is to not ask them any questions at all. I work on that, the opposite.
Yes.
And they're so willing to spill the beans then. Yeah.
As soon as that little doorway opens, then a little nudge, and then it all comes flowing out.
Yeah.
Okay, move on to the next question. Dear old queens, I'm 24 and always horny. Do I have a problem? I think about sex all the time and I masturbate daily. This is the listener, not me. I hasten to add. I love it and I'm constantly hitting on people and looking for attention. Now that I'm out as bi, I want to explore with people. I could honestly finish just thinking about a hot guy. I want to share with others, but don't want to be a whore. Any suggestions? And there's a little PS. I like to think I'm an attractive guy, but people don't seem to be interested. Okay. So what do you think about that?
There's a lot going on there, I think.
Yeah, it's quite hard to unpick.
And it's quite short and concise. But, I mean, he's thinking about sex all the time because he likes men and women. I guess you would. Because you're surrounded by everything all the time.
Not throbbing.
Mm.
I don't think there's a problem with being constantly horny.
Not when you're 24.
Well, not if you're 44.
Well, exactly, yeah. But...
You're 44. You may.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with it, but I think they've only just come out as bi, and they think they're attractive, but they think that other people are attracted to them. I think maybe they're hitting on the wrong people. What do you think, Pam?
Well, I think that might be true, and I think they might be coming on a bit too strong and thinking about how horny they are all the time, and that's not very attractive, is it? That looks a bit desperate. And they're talking about sharing. What are they sharing?
Too much, maybe.
That hasn't, they hated that. So I think, yeah, you go, yes, and have a few experiences, but you can't really, you can't swoop down like a tank on people, can you? That doesn't really work. So I think I think it's probably more symptomatic of somebody who's just defined themselves as bi, because there is more to life than sex. You have to kind of allow that as well, I think. But it can completely obsess you, can't it? And it's not a pretty sight, that really.
And I imagine right now, because of lockdown, and we're only just coming out of this lockdown in our country, there's been a long drought of sexual activity. So being horny 24/7 is probably de rigueur for a lot of people, I would imagine.
And very problematic, I would think. The life must be heartbreaking for a lot of people, I think.
But not for us, because we've got this podcast to look forward to.
Patchwork. No problem here.
Or a sex doll.
Or a sex doll.
Or two.
With live noises. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
I'm saving up as we speak.
I mean, would you consider a sex bot?
Well, I don't know. It depends on how good they are, really.
I don't think I've got the space.
In your house? On your line?
Yeah. In my house.
You could maybe rent one.
Maybe.
For an evening.
Yeah, but then you're in risk of catching...
I know, as long as it's cleaned, that seems a bit...
Yeah. I mean, in these COVID times, it would have to be, obviously... Oiled, cleansed.
You boiled your sex. Oh.
And spent 48 hours outside, which I didn't want to put my neighbours through. Mum, you've got a sex doll waiting outside your flat.
Not yet.
I mean, it could be fully clothed. It doesn't have to be naked. So.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, I have got patio chairs outside my front door.
Well, it could be that you've just got a little gathering outside.
Yeah, friend.
Yeah.
At the beginning of lockdown, I was, learning some lines, and I found it very difficult because I like to practice in front of people.
Yeah.
And I've got a little monkey. It's a bit Sunset Boulevard, really. And so I sat the monkey on the sofa and I just performed the lines for this monkey. Top tip.
Can we just clarify that the monkey is not a live monkey, is it?
No.
It hasn't just died.
No, it's a doll.
A la Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess we don't really have an answer for the 24/7 horny pie guy.
Do you know what I'm really struggling with tonight is remembering the question.
Oh, that's not the wine you've done. I think it is a very complicated question. That there's a lot of stuff they're talking about that doesn't quite fit together, and mostly it's urge, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I would have a go with your urges, but be a bit kinder to yourself and to others. Don't you don't need to go so mad, I would think.
I think you're right, Pam. I think there's desperation is always unattractive. So if you're going out and approaching people just for sex all the time, then it kind of almost sets up alarm bells, doesn't it, with people?
Yeah, and it's very exhausting in the end for you because you have to keep, that's all you think about, and that you like looking for conquest. It seems a bit tiring, I think, but we wish them well.
Yes, definitely, and good luck with that in lockdown or coming out of it or whatever. Okay, final question, which is kind of on a similar vein, but not quite. Dear old Queens, is it okay to date someone if I'm friends with their ex? Around a year ago, I started to have a crush on my friend that I thought was straight, who I'll call M, and he had started to date my other friend, who I'll call J. Around 6 months ago, they broke up. Because of this, I thought he was straight, but M recently told me that he was bisexual, and I believe he started to flirt with me. He and J broke up a few months ago. Would it be a bad idea to ask him on a date because of what happened with my friend? And there's a PS. Jay is also dating my best friend. I don't know if that applies. Well, I think if they're dating your best friend, all is fair in love and war, isn't it? What do you think?
I think it is all fair in love and war. Slightly irritating when that happens. I've been in that situation before, and it's not about the fact that they're your ex. It's just that you know how irritating they are, and you don't want to put your friend through that. But then you can't really say that because you come out sounding like an idiot.
Yeah, I guess I wonder. So I'm assuming that the friend is female.
Must be, yeah.
And he thought that their partner was straight, but then they turn out to be bi. So I guess it is slightly complicated, isn't it? If they don't know that he's bi, like the friend I meant.
Yeah.
I don't know. They haven't said whether the friend knows that their ex-partner was bi or not. What do you think, Pam?
Well, I think it is. I believe that all fair in love and war, but that doesn't really apply when you go out, and it's very important. It becomes possibly very important given your social circle, where you're going to, like, I had lots of lesbian lodgers, and they were forever falling out and pairing off, and then being unable to go to several pubs and venues. There'd be a long list of places they couldn't go, which they talked about a lot. So maybe that was part of the attraction. I think it's all right between the sheets, but when you get outside, it can be tricksy. But some people seem to thrive on that. I can't, oh my God, I saw so-and-so. Made more complicated by the bi-ness, I think. I suppose you might be revealing somebody's secrets. It sounds very complicated to me.
Yeah. I wonder if the friend is already dating his best friend, then if they're already dating somebody else, then I guess it's easier. But I guess the conflict here is loyalty to your friend, isn't it? I mean, and what kind of social code do you have with that, or moral code do you have with that? As a general rule, I don't tend to date friends' exes because I think it gets very messy with friendships.
Yeah.
But you can't help who you fall in love with sometimes.
No. But it does potentially get very messy and gummy, and then everybody ends up quite unhappy. Unless, and I do think that is quite a streak in a lot of people, that they completely love that, and they're like, oh, we mustn't go so-and-so, and, do you know what they said? And, that the relationship goes on for months or years, It
can be quite a turn on, can't it?
I think so for some people, yeah. I'd always find it appalling. I couldn't bear it. It's too complicated for me. But yeah, I think it is tricksy once you start. It's like when you work mixed business with friends, isn't it? Sex and friends, tricksy. I think
you need to be open about it right from the start with your friends.
Yeah.
And maybe talk to them about it first before you actually pursue the relationship to see how the land lies. What's more important to you? Is it the relationship or is it the friendship? And as a general rule, friendships tend to last longer than relationships.
Indeed. Yeah. So, yeah, but I mean, it takes a certain amount of maturity and stability to have those conversations. And sometimes people are deeply in lust, aren't they? And then it all gets a bit complex. That events take over, and you're talking about things in the past then, rather than, is it okay if this happens? Oh, this has happened, which people, I think. But I agree with you. Friendships last longer than relationships quite often.
Yeah. What do you think, Tommy?
I agree with everything you just said.
What? Now you're just being lazy.
Well, because you've said that, I'm going to do one more quick question. So, which I want you to answer, Tommy. So, dear old Queens, am I right to be mad at my boyfriend who likes to walk shirtless in public / urban areas? What do you think about shirtless men in a public area? I know it's summer and super hot, but I don't like it that he's showing off his body. Honestly, I have better abs, but I don't show them unless I'm at the beach or in swimming pools. So, Tommy,
I love this question. I would say yes. You are right. I think it's disgusting, but I would really appreciate seeing that. Don't stop on my account.
What do you think, Pam?
Get over yourself. Come on, if you've got better abs, take your shirt off, for heaven's sake.
Yeah, I mean, if you're jealous of your boyfriend taking off their shirt and showing it in public, just show yours in public. Why not? I mean, but surely there's a thing about, if people find your boyfriend attractive, then you've chosen the right person, right?
Well,
Well, I'll tell you what I don't like, though. I don't like it when people come. I don't know why, because I'm so, I'm so open-minded. I don't like it when someone comes into a restaurant with their shirt off.
No.
Yeah, there are. What public spaces one asks? Football match or what, swimming pool? McDonald's, maybe not. Nail bar, maybe not. So it depends on the display. But I think once you start trying to control somebody's affect, that's not good. That's not good. You shouldn't start.
It's interesting in the world of Zoom that we live in at the moment. I've done a few shows and then we've all met up on Zoom afterwards. And I always just, after a show, I just want to take my clothes off, because it's just confining. You've done a drag thing or something and you're just like, I just need to take this off. And so I would just sit there and talk to people just in my pants, like inside the dressing room. And I think that there's people that have gone, oh, I don't know how to respond to you. But I think that's maybe to do with the fact there's a relationship between, nudity and the gaze that you have with a computer screen.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. It is uncomfortable. And you've got that lovely ship. You're hardly nude at all.
It's true. I'm always dressed even when I'm nude.
Exactly, yeah.
I think this just shows insecurity with your boyfriend, and I think you need to have a discussion with him about your insecurities, I think, and get over that.
Very likely an insecure person would discuss their insecurities. You're expecting too much of the public. Just get over yourself.
I think Pam, you're right. Get over yourself. Take your shirt off as well, and just enjoy it. Pam, you've been fabulous. I cannot wait for a time when we can dance drunkenly on the dance floor again together.
It will happen.
I hope so. Thank you so much for being on the show. Please say goodbye to our lovely listeners.
Goodbye, everybody. It's been such fun. It's fantastic. It's really cheered my night up.
Great. Tommy, say goodbye.
Goodbye, Pammy. Goodbye, Bernie. Goodbye, people that listen, that can be bothered to listen.
Well, we're on over 3,000 listeners now. So
wow.
worldwide, all over the world, mainly in the UK, but all over the world as well. So, thank you for listening. And please listen to our final show of the season next week. We will see you next time on What That Old Queen. You have been listening to What? That Old Queen? Written and presented by Tom Marshman and Bernie Hodges. The show was produced by Bernie Hodges in lockdown 2020 for Hodge Podcasting. If you'd like to sponsor a show, or you'd just like to be a guest, or you have a question for the Old Queens, you can email on hello@thatoldqueen.com or find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.